Welcome to The Explainer. We are jumping right into a scene today that honestly feels like it's pulled straight out of a Hollywood thriller. Picture this. The year is 1923. We're at Cairo's Continental Hotel. A wealthy British aristocrat, Lord Carnarvon, is taking his agonizing final breath, battling a severe fever. And his sudden passing is the spark that ignites a century-long mystery, one that completely captured the imagination of the entire world.
Now, the reason the world became so incredibly obsessed with this story is all down to a chilling warning. It was allegedly inscribed on a clay tablet just outside a 3,000-year-old tomb that had been opened a few months prior. Very quickly, this newly discovered tomb became associated with 22 terrifying, completely unexplained deaths of people who are either directly or indirectly connected to the excavation.
And when you look at the timing of events, it's wild. On the exact same night, this series of seemingly impossible coincidences happened. At 1:55 a.m., Carnarvon dies. At that precise moment, the entire city of Cairo loses power and plunges into total darkness. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in England, Carnarvon's pet dog, Susie, suddenly begins to howl and drops dead. When events play out exactly like that, it's so easy to see how the legend of the Pharaoh's curse was instantly cemented in the public mind. I mean, even the creator of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, publicly stated he thought the curse was absolutely real.
Section 1. History's biggest discovery.
To really understand this curse and why it gained so much traction, we need to rewind just a few months to November 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter and his wealthy sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, were on their absolute last chance. Carnarvon had spent the equivalent of millions of dollars over 15 years with literally nothing to show for it. He basically told Carter, "This is it. This is your final season." Then, incredibly, workers unearthed 16 untouched steps leading down into the bedrock. And at the bottom, a sealed doorway bearing the royal seal of Anubis, the god of the dead. They had actually found an untouched royal tomb. What they found inside was an unimaginable hoard of wealth. We are talking about nearly 5,400 artifacts packed into this space. That included a 10-kilo solid gold death mask, a solid gold coffin, and even a dagger forged from meteorite iron. It was, without a doubt, history's biggest archaeological discovery. Everything was sitting there exactly as it had been left 3,000 years ago.
But here's the thing, that eerie atmosphere, it kicked in almost immediately. Carter kept a little golden canary as a pet. Just days after the discovery, a messenger heard a shriek, looked over at the bird's cage, and saw a cobra inside, actively eating the canary. For the local Egyptian workers, this was a deeply terrifying omen. You see, the cobra was an ancient symbol of Egyptian royalty, a protector of the pharaohs. So the idea spread like wildfire that the dead king was waking up and taking revenge on anyone who disturbed his slumber.
Section 2. Media and the Atmosphere of Fear.
So that local unease quickly snowballed into a full-blown global panic. Lord Carnarvon died from an infected mosquito bite just months after the tomb opened. And what made it even more sensational was that just 12 days prior, a prominent novelist had publicly warned him in a newspaper that anyone breaking into a sealed tomb would face terrible punishment. After his death, the global media went completely wild. It was basically the 1920s equivalent of a viral fake news story. Every time someone remotely connected to the expedition died, whether it was from a random fever, a pre-existing condition, or literally just old age, newspapers immediately declared it the curse of the pharaoh just to sell more copies.
The panic really hit its peak in 1926, when doctors finally unwrapped and performed an autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy. They found this mysterious circular lesion right on the 3,000-year-old king's cheek. And it matched the exact location of the fatal infected bug bite on Lord Carnarvon's face. Once that revelation hit the press, the world was utterly convinced. This ancient magic was real, and it was deadly.
Section 3. The Truth Behind the Curse.
Okay, let's look at the hard data here, because it systematically dismantles the entire myth. The most shocking revelation of all? That famous curse inscription, "Death shall come on swift wings," it never actually existed.
It was completely made up. Decades later, the tomb's security guard confessed that when a journalist was aggressively asking about curses, the crew didn't deny it, they just offered a mysterious smile. An imaginative reporter and an amateur archaeologist literally took that silence and invented the world's most famous curse, just to sell papers.
And this really shows how the media completely ignored basic logic to push a spooky narrative. That Cairo blackout? Well, historians note that Cairo had incredibly faulty power grids in the 1920s. Power cuts were literally a daily occurrence. The dog's sudden, simultaneous death? It actually died at 4 a.m. while Carnarvon died around midnight England time. The time zones didn't align at all. And Carnarvon's death itself? He was already chronically ill. He traveled to Egypt specifically for his poor health in a world where penicillin hadn't even been invented yet. A simple infected bug bite was often a death sentence back then.
As for those other mysterious illnesses and fevers going around the crew, well, scientists in the 1960s realized they were battling biological hazards, not ghosts. Sealed tombs like these contain ancient, highly resilient fungi, specifically one called Aspergillus niger. When you inhale it, it causes severe respiratory inflammation and high fevers. Honestly, if they just had modern basic antibiotics, the whole curse would have been cured in a matter of days.
But the absolute final nail in the coffin came from an investigator named James Randi. He mathematically crushed the legend. He went in and calculated the average age of death for the people heavily exposed to the tomb. And the result? 73 years. That was actually significantly higher than the average life expectancy for their social class at the time. If anything, you could argue the curse was extending their lives.
Section 4. The Real Story of Tutankhamun.
Because instead of this all-powerful, vengeful monster guarding a cursed tomb, the real Tutankhamun was actually a deeply fragile, tragic human being. He wasn't some mighty conqueror. He was just a 9-year-old kid placed on the throne during Egypt's absolute most turbulent and chaotic era. His father, Akhenaten, had outlawed the ancient gods and plunged the whole kingdom into ruin. Young Tut inherited this massive disaster, and he spent his short life just struggling to restore the temples and the ancient gods his father had abandoned.
Modern medical autopsies of his mummy paint a picture of a life filled with relentless pain. Because royal inbreeding was so common in ancient Egypt to keep bloodlines pure, Tutankhamun suffered from severe genetic defects. He had a debilitating clubfoot, a highly painful bone disorder called Kohler's disease, and evidence of multiple severe malaria infections, which completely explains why his tomb contained over 130 walking sticks. He couldn't even walk unassisted before his early, incredibly tragic death around the age of 18.
Section 5. Was the curse really true? Let's apply one last, definitive test to this whole legend. If this curse were real, basic logic dictates that the primary targets, the ones who violated the tomb first and most intimately, should have been struck down immediately, right? Yet look at the reality. Lady Evelyn, one of the very first people inside, lived to 78. Dr. Douglas Derry, who literally cut open the mummy, lived to 87. And Howard Carter himself, the mastermind who discovered and opened the tomb, lived another 16 years, dying of natural causes at age 64.
In fact, for the rest of his life, Howard Carter was constantly hounded by reporters begging him for spooky stories about the pharaoh's revenge, and he spent the next 16 years constantly giving them this exact, brilliant, deadpan response: "I am still alive."
But, there's actually a really beautiful twist to all of this. To the ancient Egyptians, true death wasn't just the end of your physical body. They believed you only truly died when your memory was erased from history, when your name was spoken for the final time. And Tutankhamun's successors had intentionally wiped his name from all their historical records. He was completely forgotten for 3,000 years.
Which leaves us with this really fascinating thought to take away. Thanks to a completely fake media curse and an unbelievable archaeological find, a fragile, forgotten teenage boy who was entirely erased from history is now, without a doubt, the most famous pharaoh to ever live. In a strange way, by breaking into his tomb and accidentally inventing a global myth, humanity actually gave Tutankhamun the ultimate eternal life in our minds.